Surviving Trumpsgiving. It was the first Thanksgiving under the Orange Monster. Well, this year it's Surviving Trumpsgiving too, but we have different issues now. It's not just Trumpers versus progressives. We are hearing brewing fights among progressives. And how are we going to deal with this? How are we going to remember we're a family? And how with your family who are Trumpers? How can you, in a nice way, taunt them over the big victory on the blue wave, but not turn into a food fight? Well, help us navigate. We have three great guests, two in studio and another will join us later. Aisha Moodie-Mills, political strategist, social impact advisor with over 15 years of experience building political power for people of color, the LGBT people, and women. Aisha, nice to see you again.
Hey, glad to be back.
And another Moodie-Mills. We got two Moodie-Mills, Moodie-Mills Square. Danielle Moodie-Mills, the warrior princess of the resistance, and host of Woke AF right here Sundays, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Progress. Danielle, great to see you as well.
Thank you for having me.
I've never had both of you guys on the same show.
You never have.
So awesome.
This is great because you're family. So this will give us advice of family dealing with each other. And then joining us in about 20 minutes for a little while will be an actual healthcare, mental health professional, a psychologist, Dawn Davis, who's also known as Dawn Obidala Davis, who's also my sister. And so
Family fun day.
So let's start. Danielle, we did this last year with another person who's a Republican who since then we don't speak to
Damn.
Unless you're on the panel with him or something. I have no problem. No, I'm just saying things happen. That's why it's us. Last year we talked about Thanksgiving. You were going to Thanksgiving. If I remember correctly, you said, I don't think there'll be any Trumpers at our Thanksgiving, but
yes.
But they're politically not everyone agrees on certain things. What do you recall? Were there talk of politics there?
Yeah, there was talk of politics. My family, we spend, Aisha and I spend the holidays with my family out on Long Island. And while there are no Trumpers, we are not always politically, like ideologically on the same wave. Because there are some that are quite conservative and that are Democrats and they're religiously conservative. There are others that are not, that politically engaged. I will say that though and oftentimes when Aisha and I are home, just in general, everybody wants to talk about politics because they never get to talk about politics in their day-to-day lives. Remember, these are still places where it's impolite, right? Or people don't talk about those things at work. And so when we come around, it's an opportunity for everybody else to want to talk about it. I usually prefer not to and just have a cocktail. And Aisha always leans in and will go into it. I then feel like I'm at work. But we last year there was a deep sadness. Right?
That's what you recall. When you think back last Thanksgiving, a deep sadness is what jumps out.
Yeah, because it was like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. Thanksgiving came 2.5 weeks after the election, right?
No, that was the first one.
Ago. Oh, the first.
This was already a year, almost a year after the election.
It was a year after the election, and we were still kind of settling in to what this nightmare was actually going to be, and so there are a lot of questions. We had a lot of questions and a lot of, well, maybe it won't be so bad. Well, a year later.
It was horrible.
It's worse than any of us had anticipated, right? So I think Thanksgiving is really interesting, and for some people, I recognize it's a very difficult time.
Sure.
It's very difficult I am fortunate that it's not for me, but it's very difficult for a lot of people to be around their families. This is a very triggered holiday.
Yeah,
the holiday season is a very triggering time for many people. We have a friend who has lost family because of Trump and because they are very very much Trumpers, and she became very very progressive, almost activated right after the election.
So Aisha, what do you remember about Thanksgiving?
I mean, last Thanksgiving particularly was just all like a blur and kind of numbing still, as was the first one. The first one, I don't know if Danielle remembers this, but for 16, I remember Danielle, whose father, and when we talk about Long Island, where we spend our holidays, we're talking about way out in Suffolk County. So that's further east. Yeah. So that's exit 61 on the Long Island Expressway, for anybody who's listening.
I don't want people to know exactly where we live.
What's the street address?
Just just
throw it out,
geographically,
whatever.
like people are like, oh, that's
If I
Long
had a
Island,
GPS,
that's
what
New
would I
York.
put in it? Right,
Like
right.
it's totally
It's
not.
not.
It's
Good point.
actually way out, and it's all Republican representation
right.
as well.
Yes.
So it's Trump land, and so I remember Danielle's father has gotten progressively woke since Woke AF on Sirius XM
Wow.
Progress 127, where you are right now, because he listens to Danielle's show all the time. But he used to be like the guy who wasn't particularly political. Like when we talk about apolitical, like, you know, not really engaged. So after the election, this is also a man who grew up in the era of men of a certain age who really admired Donald Trump as a businessman, right? Her father was a guy who was in finance. And so there's a whole era of men of a certain age who, like, Donald Trump was their dude. And then he became completely nuts, like on the public sphere, right? So I remember that Thanksgiving when he was elected, and this huge fight happened at the Thanksgiving table, which had to do with the question was, Danielle and I have been privileged enough to have been invited to the White House under Barack Obama for a variety of different types of events because of the work that we do. So a question was like, oh, well, I guess you guys, you know,
my
will
God,
you go
I
to
totally
the
remember
will you go
this.
to the
Oh,
White
now it
House
comes
again
back.
now that it's Donald Trump? And I remember this vividly because I sat and let it play out, and I didn't say anything in the conversation, just kind of watching it, because Danielle's father, as the apolitical one who had a reverence for Trump in his lifetime, was kind of, you know, being really bullish about, you know, I think it's really silly that you guys wouldn't go to the Trump White House if invited to, whatever, because, like, why? And so Danielle is, you know, and her mother, in fact, were both going on about, like, Trump being a racist and this, that, and the other thing, and why the hell would I go and do that? And there was this whole big brouhaha fight about it. And I remember texting Danielle's sister, who lives abroad, saying, girl, you need to know that when you get home, your father is, like, not getting it right now.
This was in 2016.
So this was a month after the election.
A few weeks, actually.
A
Just
Right.
a
few
few
weeks,
weeks.
literally
Just
a
a few
few weeks after election. So fast forward to last year, very different tone. Everyone gets it. Everyone gets, like, why this is a tragedy and completely ridiculous. But the thing that I'll share, though, because I think in our household, we don't have, we have more of, like Danielle said, kind of conservative versus apolitical, but not so much like a Trump element. But what is interesting is that my little nieces, who are 12 and 15, who've actually called in to Aunt Danielle's show, they are, their mother's partner, he is a Trumper. And during the election, was a Trumper, and they happen to be white. The girls are biracial, but he happens to be a white guy in Pennsylvania, kind of working class kind of community. And I remember during the election time, they're like, oh yeah, well, he really loves, you know, Donald Trump or what have you. And so what has been a real navigation for me with young people, and I would imagine that a lot of people listening whose children are absorbing all this stuff that's going on around us, trying to figure out, like, what do you say? How do you say what? How do you teach them to critical think and indoctrinate at the same time? Like, how do you do that, like, delicately? And what was really one of the things that happened this year that I thought was cool is that they were in town, three of them actually, listening, and I had Serious Progress on, and Woke AF was on, and they're listening, right? And I know that they're growing up in a household where the people in the household are very Trump people and the things that go with that,
wonder how
right?
that affects them.
And so I didn't have a conversation. So I kind of, like, it was on, and then I turned it off. I turned it like music. And they're like, oh no, we can't listen to Aunt Danielle's show. Why don't we listen to her? And I was like, okay. So I turned it back on, and of course the progressive narrative is coming out, and I'm just looking in the rearview mirror, like, watching how they're reacting. And one
Was
of them,
the brainwashing working?
well, one of them
I'm very
started
big into that.
saying, the older ones, they're like, you know, yeah, Trump is, like, so nasty, and he's just like like, he's just so nasty, and he just, like, acts like a jerk and, like, whatever. And so I didn't want to have a political conversation with them and just kind of see where they were going to go. But the thing that is super clear that will probably continue to come up at Thanksgivings is that young people, kids, are watching this guy be a bully and be indignant and not have manners and be impolite and just say, like, vicious, horrible, evil stuff. And that is, like, beyond the politics, quote unquote. I think the character is the piece that really is, like, affecting people as well. And I wonder how that's going to play
Well,
out.
when you think about it, they're in schools being taught anti-bullying stuff all the time. You don't pick on people. You don't mock them for their weaknesses. You don't become this jerk. You don't revel in cruelty. And Trump is doing the exact opposite. So they're getting one message at school. When I was a kid, we weren't talking about anti-bullying stuff. Like, so now you are. So you're taught from teachers you like, and you see the red-haired monster doing the bullying. Now, to remind people, last Thanksgiving, like I had a very nice Thanksgiving, my sister and family and in-laws and stuff. We're all progressives, but there was a sense of despair because keep in mind, we had lost every special election up until that point. We were doing close. We almost flipped a few. It was not great. It was not a good place. They had the Senate, they had the House, they had at the time 33 governorships, 2/3 of state legislatures. About 3 weeks later, we win Alabama. So this is all, and Connor Lamb didn't win to the spring. We were really in a very dark place. So there was a lot of sense of like, hey, it's got to get better, right? I mean, or hopeful that taking solace from, we had lost some of these district special elections by only a few points when Trump had just won it by 20. We were hoping for real, tangible success, but we didn't have that yet. So there was a sense of like, I don't know where this is going to go, but I'm going to be what I am, which is a cheerleader type of person and seeing the bright side and going, it's going to be fine. I know my fellow Americans come through. And they started to then. And now, flash forward. We won Alabama. We won Colorado. Now we've won 7 governorships. We won probably 30. The newest estimates we're going to get 39 House seats.
7 state legislatures flipped as well.
And just before you were on, I had the first Muslim American elected to the state Senate in North Carolina. We have so many firsts all over the nation.
Yep.
And it's a different sense. There's an optimism. And how do you deal now? How will you deal now? Because you're not going to probably have Trumpers at your thing, but how would you deal in the real world? Because you're not going to have them. Or what would you say to people who have a Trumper there? And now you're going in and we have a little bit energy in our step. We're feeling pretty good about it. You get there, the Trumper does the Senate, the Trump line. The Senate's more important. And we really wanted, because Trump declared it a victory. I mean, it was the greatest night ever. And they say that. And that would piss off me, and I don't get pissed off easily. I'm like, you know what? You're stupid. The House is the key. We're going to have investigations. Spending bills have to start there. That'd be one of the few things that would piss me off if they would mimic that. The rest of the stuff, I wouldn't care. What do you think you say to someone who is a Trumper and they deny the reality, and you know it's the reality?
But you know that I actually do not engage with Trumpers, and I think that when
what would you say? You're sitting at the table.
I'm
with
sitting
them.
at the table, and they say something like that, and it's just like, look, like you don't operate in a place of reality. Here's the thing: is that this past election was indeed a referendum on Trump,
right?
Because the districts that were flipped were in red like they were in red places. Like we knew that that there was a likelihood because there was only 24 seats that were needed for us to get, but we got almost 40, right? So like, what if that's not a wave? Then I don't know what is. And so the reality is that America spoke, and what they said was, this president needs a check and a balance. And clearly it's not coming from the Supreme Court. Clearly it is not coming from the Senate. So this is what we have right now. And we know also that the map in 2020 looks very good in terms of the Senate for Democrats.
They're going to be like,
right?
fake news.
So
that's the thing is that these people are not people that you speak facts to, right? So
right, that's
I
the
would
problem.
not.
You can't reach them.
I don't believe in ruining your Thanksgiving by trying to debate intellectually with a bunch of racist fools. And what I would do is I would actually use that moment in front of everyone to really call a spade a spade. So you're proud that you won by having your people march in Charlottesville, your white supremacists. You're proud that they were a galvanizing force for you. You're proud that you won because a campaign
but would you say
in
this to
Florida.
Your aunt or your uncle? I mean,
But I'm a little bit of a dick. So yeah. So you're proud that you won, especially because I'm a black woman and I can say that. Great, you're sitting here in my face telling me that you're proud that you won because in Florida, you had a governor who ran nasty, vicious, racist robocalls, and that's like your shtick, and you're sitting here applauding.
And you suppressed the vote in Georgia?
And in Georgia. And so, if that's who you are and that's who you want to be, you're revealing your character. I'm not going to debate with you because I know who we are and what our values are. But the question is, why are you so smug and excited about yours?
All right, let's take a quick break. We're going to come back, and we're going to have a doctor, a psychologist, join us for a little bit, Dawn Davis, to give us, and we're going to have a joint conversation, all three of us here, about her suggestions, because I definitely want to get to something that every progressive listening is going to happen. It's going to happen, folks. I wasn't sure of it, but now I am. Progressives fighting amongst ourselves. Nancy Pelosi's name's going to come up, and you're going to have some going, not in the way that we fight Trumpers, but like, I think we need a change. Others going, she's great, because I had it last night on my show. One person made a comment, and all the lines lit up that weren't lit. and people want, and I got emails today, and that's what you're going to see. You're going to see discussions about 2020. They're going to come up. And progressives, I don't want us to lose the idea that we are a family. So don't fight fellow progressives like they're Trumpers. So let's take a break and come back and try to make sense of what I think all progressives are going to have to deal with. How do we be respectful to our fellow progressives, not back down on our views, what we're about, but not become vicious? Be right back after this break right here on the Dean Obeidallah Show. You're listening to the Dean Obeidallah Show, where we crush Trump's lies every single day.
On Sirius XM Progress 127. The biggest stories of the day, right now. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show.
On Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live right here talking about surviving Trumpsgiving 2, my friends. In studio, Aisha Moodie-Mills, Danielle Moodie-Mills, and now joining us, Dr. Dawn Obeidallah Davis, developmental psychologist who is a former faculty at Harvard Medical School, current yoga and mindfulness teacher in Boston, author of a new book, Mom As You Are, coming out in December, and she's my sister. So, Dr. Dawn Obeidallah Davis, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
Fine. So, Thanksgiving's coming up. You're stuck with your brother, who's very difficult. How will you deal with your brother that causes trouble all the time? No, Dawn, our Thanksgiving last year, it's all progressives. That's even our mother, who is old school Italian, thinks Trump is a jackass. So
she hates him.
Right, she
oh
really
my
hates
God.
him. It's remarkable. She hates him. It's a Jersey thing. That's why he's not liked in Jersey. It's not the kind of bigotry and viciousness of Trump. So, Dawn, we were talking here with Aisha and Danielle. Before we get into how do progressives don't cannibalize ourselves and destroy ourselves.
Yeah.
What do you suggest? Someone's going to this Thanksgiving, and look, it was a good win 2 weeks ago. Really good win.
Yeah.
They get there, their
Amazing.
MAGA hat wearing uncle's like, it was nothing. You lost. We won. Trump kept the Senate, all that. How do you not like just grab something and throw it?
You know, it's a really great question. And I have to say, I loved what Aisha and Danielle were talking about. A lot of these people do not operate from reality. And we know who we are. And they're kind of messed up in a million different ways. And if you want to talk about some literature, some science that would back up the impetus to not actually engage with some folks in conversations that are just going to go nowhere.
Right.
You can look at some brain science. I swear to God, you cannot make this stuff up. There's science that shows that conservatives, who we all know they tend to look at the world as kind of hostile and frightening place, that there are brain scans, like MRI scans of brains of conservatives versus liberals. And
they find no brain in the conservative, right? There's nothing there. It's just emptiness.
It's empty. Okay. But
It's like,
what
oh my
is
God,
there
we can see through you.
is they have larger
translucent.
amygdalas. These are parts of the brain that's involved in fight, flight, or freeze. So that part of the brain is totally fueled and filled and big. Whereas the liberals, conversely, the part of our brain that's more filled is the more developed frontal cortex, the anterior cingulate, without getting too complicated. It's the part of the brain that helps people cope with complexity. So that's what we have.
Wow. So we really are smarter, is what you're saying.
No, we're physiologically superior. Like,
all right.
So we're a superior ideology. That's not racist, right? It's not.
It's
not
science.
It's science. So we can say to Trumpers, look, it's not your fault.
I'm just. They're not
just
playing with
smarter.
the full deck.
No.
I know I'm pissing off some of your conservative.
No. Because you're
listeners,
saying
but
you're a
this is science.
doctor.
I'm
You're
sorry,
right.
I can't make this
No,
up.
they don't believe in science, so it doesn't really matter what you're saying.
Exactly,
means
they don't
nothing.
believe it. So.
When I've had Trumpers go, you think you're smarter? I go, no, I don't think.
I actually know.
And now you have support.
Solidified
So
it.
now, so Dr. Dawn Davis here is saying that our brains are, and there's a great book, Dr. Drew Weston, called The Political Brain, where it goes through that exact thing, where the brain, really, if you give the same stimulus to a conservative or a liberal, and they do brain scanning at the same time, different parts of our brain are triggered. That's why you talk about a caravan coming.
Right.
It works for them. For us, we're like, well, you're crazy. What's wrong with you? And we'll give them facts going, it's 2 months away. They don't care. They're literally afraid. They can't help it.
Well, so to that point, though, Dawn, because I feel like then you can help progressives.
Dr. Dawn, sorry.
Dr. Dawn, you can help
Oh, come on.
progressives in terms of
Donnie
how.
from the block.
But in terms of how we message, because if our complex, nuanced messaging is not reaching conservatives, because we're literally talking to the frontal lobe or wherever you said we get our most complex ideas and associations from, then how is it that we understand? What did you say? What is the medulla? What is it?
The amygdala.
The amygdala. How do we understand the amygdala then in a way that we can message in a way that they're actually going to understand?
Interesting.
Is there a way for us? Because obviously Trump and all of the conservatives, they know exactly how to trigger, right? They know exactly how to trigger this space. So is there information that we could use, scientific information that we can use in terms of our messaging?
That's the point you're missing. No,
I want the doctor to answer.
All right. So my mind is going in a couple different directions, but I'll speak to two. One is that it sounded like you were starting to talk about like what came for, but maybe not. So if you can't get away from them. You have to sit and carve this turkey, and you're just holding it together, and you don't really want to engage, but they're poking you, right? How exactly are you going to position whatever your point of view is in such a way that they can hear it?
Yes.
And so my understanding would be that you would go into some of the basics that they value. They really value tradition. So you would position whatever you're talking about as these are core American traditional values and things like that. And it doesn't slip off my tongue that easily to say those things. But last night I had the opportunity to hear Gloria Steinem speak here in Boston at Symphony Hall. She was
Love her.
off the fucking chart. Amazing. Just so incredible. And she talked about the issue of pro-life versus pro-choice. And she said, if you're talking to someone who is pro-life, the way that you get them on board, from her perspective, and it actually resonated with me to some extent, so I'm going to offer it here in case it might be helpful to you guys or to a listener, is that you talk to them about how your point of view actually encompasses theirs. Because if we have choice, they still get to be pro-life. So we get what we want, they get what they want. It sort of positions it in such a way that they can have their pro-life, they can personally be as pro-life as they want to be. But the government doesn't get to say, this is what you women have to do with your bodies and legislate it. So it was a really interesting point of view of sort of taking the scope instead of this is, I want outcome A and you want outcome B. It's saying my outcome of C is going to encapsulate both A and B.
But Dr. Dawn, how do we...
I was kidding about Dr. Dawn, by the way.
Let me tell you what. She earned that doctorate,
No, she did.
and we are going to honor it.
I was only kidding. You want to say, you can say Dr. Dawn, whatever you want. I am Dr. D.
I believe in honoring degrees.
I have a JD. I have a Juris Doctor. I have a doctor in law. Please call me Dr. D for the rest of the show. That's my name.
So how do we apply exactly what you're saying, which feels so great to me from a messaging standpoint, when we're trying to get through to someone who may just disagree with us? But how do we apply that fundamentally to deviation of value? So, for example, so much of this Trumper business in, especially, I'll use immigration, because I know that Dean's people are like, why do you keep having Aisha on your show and all she ever wants to talk about is white supremacy? But let's use like the immigrant dog whistle, right? Those brown people marching for the border, the women and children who, God forbid,
fleeing violence,
right? They're right.
Catastrophe.
How do you then apply that and try to have some shared value when in fact it's bias, bigotry, ignorance, racism that is the core of what people are flustered about or what people like about Donald Trump? So it's hard to say like, oh, well, I don't know what's the narrative there. So like, how do you apply that when they're just completely wrong and ignorant and evil without saying, Grandma, you're ignorant and evil?
Yes. So I think it's an excellent question, and that it presumes that you want to engage with them, because as we were talking earlier, like if we're really operating from completely different brain structures, sometimes the language that we're going to use is not going to reach them. And liberals, and I'm going to generalize now, we tend to be more open-minded. We actually have a higher tolerance for complexity and pain than conservatives, and that also is science.
I'm going to carry you around with me everywhere because literally you're making every point. But then you have the word doctor in front of your name, so everyone believes you.
You are so cute. I love it. Thank you. You guys make me feel really good. You got to have me on more often, Dean. This is good for the ego.
Never going to happen again.
That's right. He's like, God,
only one Obi-Doll is going to be on the radio.
Sit down
That's
at Thanksgiving dinner.
Damn it. We're not speaking Thursday. Don't even look. No eye contact Thursday on Thanksgiving. Don't even talk to me. No, sorry. Go ahead. You were answering a good thing. Go ahead. Sorry.
So if we're really operating in different places, the question is, do we? What is the value of our engaging with them? Like, what are we hoping to get? Because it's quite possible. If we're as open-minded as many of us are, and again, generalization, but if we are, there is no way on earth that they're going to convince me that their racist, bigoted, homophobic, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic perspective works. There's just no way on earth. I don't care whatever they think that's why that works, it's not going to work for me. And I'm open-minded, but I'm not going there. So if I'm not going there, and I'm really tolerant of a lot of things, what makes us think that they're going to come see our point of view? They're not.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And because we're never going to meet them halfway on racism.
No.
I'm not gonna there's no meeting. There's no halfway. Right. There's no meeting you
that.
halfway on bigotry. When they say common ground is on policy issues about tax cuts or tax increases or government regulations.
But their little peanut brains don't think about policy issues we just learned.
They
right?
do
So
not.
there's
They
not
don't even
even
know
a
what's
place
happening.
to go.
So is peanut brain, Dawn, is that the clinical term?
Peanut brain,
Conservatives
yeah.
have?
Shelled or unshelled is actually the differentiation in the literature, but we can go with
All right,
peanut
let's
brain.
Dawn, you're please stay around, Dawn, because I want to come back and take a break and ask you the really important question all of us have to discuss. It is now we are pivoting to the place where progressives are going to start. We are already beginning to fight with each other. It's not vicious yet, but I know what it can be because I lived through 2016. I saw the Hillary-Bernie fight. We had it on the show yesterday. I had it in emails today from people who heard us talking about Nancy Pelosi. I did not even try to discuss that, bring that issue up. But the fact that 16 Democratic Congress people put in a letter made it newsworthy. So I mentioned that. And all of a sudden, and it was not mean yet, but there were a few people going, that person's they'd call up about another fellow progressive, that person's ageist, or they're being, sexist and all that instantly. And I'm like, we're going too quickly because I didn't get that sense of why that person didn't want Nancy. Wasn't that reason. So let's take a break and come back. Surviving Trumpsgiving 2, how do we deal with our fellow progressives in a way that doesn't destroy the unity that we need? Because we need that going into 2020. You could put your Trump supporting uncle you could never talk to again. Doesn't matter. But we need our fellow progressives so that we win in 2020. So let's come back and figure out how we navigate that. More with Aisha, Danielle, and Dr. Dawn Davis right here on the Dino Bidala Show. Progressive values are the best of American values, and we need to keep fighting for them to save our country.
Don't go anywhere. This is the Dino Bidala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. Welcome to the Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show and our Surviving Trumpsgiving 2. I'm joined by Aisha Moodie-Mills, political strategist, see her all the time on MSNBC. Danielle Moodie-Mills, who you also see on MS all the time, and she hosts Woke AF right here Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And Dr. Obadala Davis, who is my sister, a developmental psychologist, current yoga and mindfulness teacher, and her new book, Mom As You Are, is coming out in December. So let's go to the big question, which I think every progressive, you better be listening because we got to deal with this. Because you're going to have someone at Thanksgiving who's going to bring up Nancy Pelosi because it's in all the news. The news loves narratives of drama and theatrics.
Yeah, of course.
So they like to divide us. They love to the media. That's what they're
Yeah.
about. They're doing it now to Democrats. Someone's going to bring up that just as an example. I'm sure there are other issues as well, like 2020. Like, I like this person. Like, someone will say, I like Bernie. They'll go, he's not even a Democrat. He's an independent. And bingo, fight. Or I think Hillary should run. Or someone says, I like Joe Biden. Whatever they are. So let me start with you guys here in the studio. Then we'll get to Dawn as the psychologist professional. Aisha, what you're going to be, even if it's not Thanksgiving, but what would you say to people Thanksgiving who are like, they love each other. They're real family members. They agree fundamentally. They hate Trump. They really hate Trump. But they don't want Nancy Pelosi speaker. They're the one who loves Nancy Pelosi. What do you do when it gets, instead of getting heated?
You know,
And you did this on air the other day.
I did?
Yeah, on MSNBC.
Oh, well, yeah, I did actually. It was actually last night on Hardball, funny enough.
Right.
So here's the first thing that I would honor and acknowledge for all of you who kind of get into these tiffs. The fact that your family is woke is huge and a big deal and a win, right? The fact that people are actually paying attention and have an opinion. Because let me tell you, my cousins in South Carolina who are not people who are politically engaged are texting me about stuff all the time.
Same with me.
The fact that like people want to debate things, let's honor that this is a good thing, that the midterm turnout was record breaking because more people are paying attention. So once we can kind of like have some like chuckles of like, well, at least we're all in it and paying attention and we can have a spirited thing.
Right.
Then, you know, what I did last night on MSNBC, and here's what I would encourage all of you to do. We guys are playing defense still. We just won the House, right? But we're still playing defense. And here's the thing. We want to win and we need power. And I would just relay to people like, look, guys, I get it. We want to have democratized ideas, but we also want to support leaders who actually know how to get things done in the short term because we don't have time for experiments right now. We will have experiments later on, like when we're all shored up, but like talk to them about frankly, the merits of having people who know how to like kick ass and take names effectively in positions of power, and that would be Nancy Pelosi.
100%.
There is no one else.
But
who's
you're
an alternative to
debating.
that.
But you're actually debating the topic as opposed to how do you navigate. Like, is it better if you have a? Let me ask you, Danielle.
Yeah.
The fellow progressive, you love the person. You despise Trump together. You're down on everything. Some fundamental difference. It could be 2020 candidates. You talk about something and it gets heated. Do you agree that you tell them, hey, look, let's just agree to disagree on that, but let's unify on the big picture together? I mean, what would you suggest to people?
Here's the reality. We are in the midst of Armageddon. People always tell me all
My
the
wife
time,
is
look,
not
I am,
dramatic at all.
but you know, people tell me that I'm dramatic. People tell me that I'm hyperbolic, but the reality is this. If you look at what has transpired over the last 2 years, tell me where the lie is. We are in the midst of Armageddon. We are in the midst of a war, a culture war, a policy war, a culture war. Like, we are at war with Trump and the Republicans and what they're trying to do to this country to discredit and to demoralize and to deconstruct the American dream.
Sure.
So I do not have time for your bullshit and to argue with you about who you think should hold the gavel. Because at the end of the day, what we need to be focused on is winning. What we need to be focused on is making sure that this country does not fall apart. And the person who I believe, let me tell you something, those 16 Democrats that signed that letter, I'm going in. The 16 people that signed.
She snapped her finger, folks, in case you couldn't hear it. She really, literally did. I'm not kidding.
The
In my
16
face.
people that signed that letter saying that they didn't want Nancy Pelosi to hold the gavel, but didn't offer up not one person that they thought that should replace her. Let me tell you something. You are a fool and you made yourself look stupid. Okay? Because at the end of the day, we need to win. At the end of the day, we need somebody that can go toe to toe with Trump. And right now, I will take 78-year-old Nancy Pelosi with her badass suits and her record of accomplishments to any clown that wants to rock the label of progressive but ain't have a record. Okay? That's I'm done.
Well
Oh, my
put.
God.
And we are so Dawn. So when Trump gets reelected, because we're going to kick the
You want
shit
me
out of
to
each
follow
other,
that?
apparently, as progressives. Because I asked them, how do you get along with each other if you disagree? And they both did rants about why Nancy Pelosi's the best thing and why I don't have time for your stupidity. So
You have two black women on the air. What do you want us to say?
it's fine. No, I like you have to be honest about this stuff. So Dawn, how do we let's role play this here, that how do we have a conversation with fellow progressives where we're not instantly dismissive of each other? Because that is my greatest nightmare, that we do that and
Yeah.
people check out. How do we not have a Bernie Hillary divide happen in the next few months? Because we're all going to be so passionate. I'm sincerely concerned about this
Yes,
because
you
I
should
want
be.
us to win.
All
So
right. So
be
it's a real
Dawn, be
concern.
the attached doctor here. Help us.
I detached. All right, here's what I'm thinking. But I agree. It's a real concern, and it is a culture war, and we really are kind of in the middle of this soup. But if I was to think about this from a more as you're saying, detached perspective, think about common enemy theory. Do you guys know this theory?
No.
What is
Walk
it?
You
us
don't know
through
this?
When I
it.
explain
Oh,
it to
this
you,
is
you'll
very
say,
good.
"Oh, yeah, that's
know
what
it.
that is." Okay, so it's basically that in the face of a threatening common enemy, people's relationships cement. You get cohesive. You get within the group. And, you ever hear the expression, a nation is never as unified as it is in a time of war?
Yeah.
And we are in a time of war,
Yes.
as you pointed out. So we really have this common enemy. Then we get this little bump, this little win, and we're like, oh my God, we're tearing the big beast down. Yeah, kind of, sort of, and there's so much work to do. All we basically did was we just put a few more bullets in the ammunition. That's the wrong analogy, but we just got a little more bolstering. That's all we did. We have not torn it down yet. So the reason why this would, from the perspective of common enemy theory, mean that we're more cohesive. People say, oh, it's because we're something to be hostile against. It's actually about security. It's the feeling we need security, and that's what unifies the group. So what we can do in the absence of Trump, pushing on us, though he will, and he continues to.
Well, of
but
course,
at
he
least
won't let us
having the
down.
House-
That's the one good thing. He will
You know,
continue
yeah.
to.
Yeah, that's true.
He will continue to animate us.
That's
The one
true.
If
thing
he
we
was
can count
quiet,
on
it would be a different scenario. I know the next day
He can't
he'll
help
give us something
himself, yeah.
that will unite us as the economy. And because I think, Dawn, the common enemy idea has been the thing that it's sort of blurred over the Hillary-Bernie divide, that it united people to go like, this guy is so bad. And at least on my show, I'm like, I'm not going to entertain these discussions to relitigate. Last year, people started calling about fighting Hillary and Bernie. I'm like, we're not going to do this.
You can't do that.
The threat in front of us is too acute to have these little games about this other stuff.
Right.
And I said, I respect everyone's opinion, but we're not going to do that. So,
No,
Dawn,
what
what
we
do you
need
what do
is
you
a
say on a practical
cohesive
matter?
narrative
So on
for
a
the
practical matter,
progressive
no,
agenda.
but let's be honest here. Thanksgiving is 2 days away, and this is
Yeah.
going to replay on Thanksgiving. People are throwing stuffing at each other and they're listening to this, and they go, "Put it down and listen to the doctor." And so Dr. Dawn's going to say, "What do you do? Do you literally say, look, we're disagreeing, but we can agree on the fact we have to defeat Donald Trump in 2020, and that's our number one goal. So
I think that
what do you
the
do?
key is so the reason why what we really need is something that will give us meaning and structure. And so to galvanize our thinking, to raise our consciousness to the level of what is our ultimate goal. Our ultimate goal is to dethrone this despot tyrant
Right.
who has managed to place himself in the highest office in the land, and to get other people, progressives, liberal-minded people in positions of power, women of color, men of color, people who are, they know, we've been there, we get it, and that's who we need to have at the helm. So if we keep in mind, how are we going to develop a cohesive, progressive agenda? That should be the discussion. It should be at that level. It feels like it's more theoretical, but in actuality, then all the other pieces will fall into place from there. So, for example, if we say a cohesive, progressive agenda includes nominating people to courts, federal courts across the nation, not just the Supreme Court, but federal judges across the nation, who are progressive, then how are we going to do that? And it's beyond the little minutia of the Pelosi, no Pelosi, or even who the presidential candidate for 2020 should be. I mean, a lot of that is completely out of our hands. But what we can do is to talk about what is a valuable, value-added, something that we can do to help the progressives in general, and really use this opportunity. You know, in yoga, they say the most beautiful flower, the lotus flower, emerges from the shit. It does. It actually grows out of the shit.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
If all else fails,
out of this cesspool that we have managed to land into for the last, 18 months, whatever, 20 months, we can find ways to create beauty that actually works for us, which will ultimately work for the nation, I believe. Then let's do it. We really have to harness this.
So can I ask Dr. Dawn a question?
Of course.
So I know that you all know me as a political strategist. I talk about this all the time. And as a dick, right? I go on TV.
Self-described. You said that first because you're just
I tell Republicans
that
I don't have two fucks to give about them, especially if they're like associated with like white supremacists and racists.
Absolutely.
But
and they all are.
But here's the thing, though. This year for me has also been a time of like reflection and taking a bit of a reprieve. So like my mother-in-law were talking about how we actually tune out. Like I'm sitting here and Dean is watching like every news show and I'm like, oh my God, dude, I'm gonna die. Why are you watching all this?
No, I listen to you. I've learned to listen and watch little things.
I do the same
thing. But the thing, it's all the saturation of it all will drive you batshit crazy.
Yes,
so I have found a little bit of my sanity. I've reclaimed some of my sanity by being able to be woke, but check out in helpful ways. And so I wonder if, as a psychologist, you have any things that you can share that we can then impart on loved ones who are overwhelmed by everything that's happening during the Thanksgiving season around how they can manage some self-care while they continue to be engaged and, active, etc. But like how to, I don't know, compartmentalize or something. But
this
like
the question Aisha
stuff
is asking on my behalf because she thinks that I am actually absolutely crazy.
So, Dawn, we have 2 minutes.
Well, we all
2 minutes
are.
before we have to go to break. So go ahead. I think it's an important question. Go.
Do you want me to hold?
No. Because when we come back, we're gonna have like literally 1 minute after that for the show. So go ahead.
So in a nutshell, my suggestion would be: 1, compartmentalize; 2, watch the volume of what you're ingesting. You have to look at the media as if it was food. You wouldn't just sit there and go into the supermarket and eat everything off the shelf, but a lot of times we treat the media that way, and we just like, what does CNN say? What does MSNBC say? What does this one say? What does Huffington Post? And we're off to the races. And it's the first thing we take in the morning and often the last thing we take in at night, so that we disrupted our sleep pattern. So I would recommend limiting the exposure as if watching the media was a piece of trauma, really, because a lot of the stuff that comes out is triggering. As you put earlier, the holidays are, and so is a lot of the stuff that's going on in the media. The other thing I would recommend is, we were talking earlier at the beginning of my hanging out with you guys about the brain structures. Well, there's a great deal of research showing that meditation increases this frontal lobe, and makes more the gray matter denser. In other words, if your gray matter, if your brain has more connectivity, you'll actually feel more relaxed. You'll be able to focus better. Your concentration.
So meditation is helpful.
And you'll be
people can do that for a few minutes.
Meditation.
I need to meditate.
All right, so Dawn, stick around, Dawn. We're going to come back. We'll have like about a minute, not even a minute each, like 30 seconds, what you give thanks for. So let's come right back with more Surviving Trumpsgiving 2 right here on the Dean Obeidallah Show.
Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
Welcome back to the Moodie-Mills Show, Surviving Trumpsgiving. I'm here with Aisha Moodie-Mills, Danielle Moodie-Mills, and Dr. Dawn Davis. And it's so funny because Dawn Davis is my sister, and I was just talking to Aisha and Danielle, and like, we spent 3 days with our family. I'm like, I couldn't spend 3 days with my family.
That's what he said about you, Dr.
I know.
Dawn.
And then, let me go back to my sister.
I'm so hurt.
Not you. Hey, look, we've got 30 seconds each to say what you're thankful for this Thanksgiving before we run out of time. And folks at home, tomorrow on my show, when we're live the day before Thanksgiving, I'll take calls and we'll do that together. But tonight, so let's start with the people in the studio here. Aisha, Danielle, who wants to start? Aisha.
I am thankful for friends and family. Guys, shit is crazy. Hug your loved ones close because we all we got.
Yeah. I was literally going to say the same thing. I'm very blessed and fortunate to have beautiful family, wonderful friends who really love, support, and uplift me. And I'm grateful and thankful for them in these crazy, crazy times. You need to love up on everybody and spread love. It's the Brooklyn way. Shout out to
and Dawn, what are you thankful for, Dawn?
I love it, and I second everything that you guys are saying. I'll go in a slightly different direction. Although I agree with everything, and yes. I'm also grateful for outlets like this where we can speak our minds. Wow. And I'm grateful. This is going to sound so twisted and fucked up, but bear with me. I'm grateful for Trump because it's his destructive nature that has inspired my husband and I to raise 3 activist daughters.
Yes.
They are woke, they are aware, and they are pissed. Woohoo! So the next generation is going to be fierce, and I'm so grateful for that.
Awesome.
Well, and I'm grateful for you 3 coming on tonight, right here to talk about this. I wish you guys, and Dawn, I'll see you on Thanksgiving. Everyone out there, great Thanksgiving. We're going to survive, and we're going to, after Thanksgiving, enjoy, recharge, and we come back.
Yeah.
The fight begins. 2020 has already started. Candidates are already announcing.
We're back, baby.
We're going to win. All right, thanks very much for tuning in. Thank you guys very much for being here.
Thank
Have a great
you.
Thanksgiving,
Happy
everyone.
Thanksgiving, everyone.